Hello, everyone. We are back again. Gemma and I still do not know what week it is, but that's okay because we do.
I just saw it. It's 16.
Okay, episode 16.
I'll show you later. There is a place that says it.
We do know what we're talking about today, though. Kids and money, or talking about money with kids, more specifically. There's a lot that we could go through in this topic, but I wanted to start by talking about our experience and growing up ourselves, and then the experience that we're having with our kids at the moment. So I have a 4 and a 7-year-old, and you have a 5 and an 8. Am I close? No, 7. I'm thinking 8 and let me start again. 7 and 9.
Yeah.
And let's start by going back to, I guess, your childhood, Gemma. What did things look like? Like, did you know about money? Did your family talk about money?
So I've been thinking about this a lot over the last couple of years when I started doing money mindset and personalities and where you form your mindset, because apparently you form your mindset around age 7 on how you're going to deal with money. So in my household, I do remember there was a lot of conflict around money, and Mum was always doing budgets and grocery budgets, and we would stick to a budget. But they did talk about money, but I don't remember it being in a super healthy way. I kind of remember it being in a really restrictive way. But then, so that's what I kind of thought growing up, we didn't have a lot of money and we were always on a budget and things. But now when I look back, so we lived on a big property. We always lived in great houses. They always renovated them and things. So we lived in a very big, beautiful house. I had horses. I went to pony club. So I think what Mum and Dad were doing is they were sacrificing in areas so that we could have other areas. And we always went on family holidays. And, I went on exchange to Japan for 2 weeks when I was 14. I just think, oh my God, that's a huge expense to send one of your 3 kids. So now I look back and go, oh, they were scrimping and saving in other areas because they were prioritizing experiences and things. But yeah, when I think about how they talked about money, I'm very conscious of doing the same, but talking about it differently. So it's got a different undertone to it. So my kids know that that's why we're prioritizing, not because we don't have money. Does that make sense? Not the fear kind of thing that I kind of thought that, I feared money and spending it and things.
I have a lot of clients where money wasn't spoken about at all. And if it was ever brought up in conversation, it was kind of immediately shut down. And that might have been for lots of different reasons. My own experience, though, it was spoken about very regularly. It was just part of our normal day-to-day conversation, not so much about how much money do we have or anything like that. It was about how to use money. So, looking at prices at grocery shops and even talking about things around us like cars and anything and everything that comes up in life. And I remember I found this out when I was a little bit older, that someone close to us had made the comment to my mum, you shouldn't talk to Lexi about that stuff, let her be a kid. And so she basically shut that down from what I understand and said, no, this is how I want to parent. These are the things that I want to talk about with my child. And in hindsight, of course, I'm very grateful for that, because I don't think that I would have then become a financial advisor, then become a financial coach and be doing what I'm doing now.
She would be ahead of her time as well, being really open, talking to kids about money. Not a lot of people, so we were born in the 80s. Not a lot of people talked about money.
Yeah. And I guess I do the same with my kids, even though it's a little bit over their heads at this age. I remember driving just to school one day and I said to Ruby, so she would have been in prep, and we looked at a house that was for rent just 2 doors up, we drove past it. And so that led to a conversation between her and I, so she would have been 6 at the time, saying that some people rent and some people have a mortgage, and that means that the bank owns part of their house and that you pay money. In both scenarios, you pay money. And so these are the things, whilst it's kind of going over her head at this point, it's been a topic of conversation. And so that next time it's a topic of conversation, she'll understand it that little bit more. And then that led to a discussion on appreciating assets and depreciating assets. And it was the first time she'd really engaged in that kind of higher level conversation about money. And so it lasted maybe 5 minutes. Like it wasn't too long, but we kind of just stopped the conversation when you could tell that she wasn't really interested anymore, but really grabbing those opportunities as they come up and really not pushing it at like, okay, we need to talk about money today at this time. It's just let it freely flow.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And then at the point where they're ready to learn more and more, the learning curves are not going to be as steep, right? They can just take in all these little bits at a time. I'm exactly the same with my kids. So right now their minds are a bit blown because I've just moved into a rental. And so we've been here 6 months, but they've always known us owning our home. And so they're like, oh, hang on, Mum. You said that we're paying for the house, but it's our furniture. Is that ours? Is that ours? Like, and they're really just like, oh, and then we've got rentals as well. So they're starting to go, hang on, so people pay us money to live in the house that we've got, but we don't. And then you can just see their little brains ticking over. And I think they've got it. Like, we'll talk about it so often, and then they've got it, and then just randomly they'll be like, hey, Mum, is the couch ours, or are we renting that? And I'm like, no, that's ours. It's not sticking, but they ask enough. It's really, really interesting to see how their little minds are like, what is going on kind of thing. But so I talk about money with my kids a lot, and I'm really, again, just like you, just if it comes up in conversation, and if they don't keep the conversation going, it's gone, right? Like, I'm not sitting down with a whiteboard and being like, right, money coaching time, guys. But I think the most important thing that I try to do with them is talk about prioritizing. And I have to catch myself because I still do it. I say, no, we can't afford that. And we can afford it. And I don't want them to be worried.
You just want to stop asking.
So I just say, oh no, remember we're prioritizing spending, or remember we're saving because we're going here, or we're doing that instead, or remember we bought that thing. So we don't need to spend money all the time. But my go-to is just to shut them down and go, we can't afford it. But I don't want to create that perspective in their mind. So I try to talk to them about prioritizing. And also you touched on the value. So I talk about the value, and now they'll do that as well. They'll be like, oh, look, that's like that much, but you could get 3 for that much. And I'm like, oh, love it. Just putting stuff into perspective. So you know how they can't get their minds around amounts of money. So I'll be like, I try to say, oh, like a car is worth this much, and that's maybe 20 times like a house, like I try to like kind of explain it like that, because they just have no concept of money, right? Like, they think their iPads are the most expensive important thing in the world. Like,
and you can use that to your advantage as well when they don't understand how much bigger something is. So as an example of that, if my kids want something in the shops that's $5-10 and I don't want to buy it for them for a number of different reasons, I have said in the past to them, well, do you want that, or do you want a caravan? Because at the moment we're looking to buy a caravan, and that's something that they're very excited about. And so it's a very then easy thing for them to put that down and walk out of the shops, because they're like, oh yeah, we're getting a caravan, and they're really excited about that. Whereas if I had just said like, no, we can't afford that, then they, a tantrum would have started.
But that's what we tell adults too, right? We say, when you're in the shop and you're like, yes, I want a pair of jeans, think about what you want more, like your caravan or your holiday. So it's exactly the same concept. So if that works for them now, chances are it'll work for them when they're adults. So that's a really healthy thing to be saying.
And something that works for me probably more than I expect it to is, given the ages of my kids and being excited about Santa coming, we take photos for Santa. So if there's something that they want, I say, okay, let's take a photo for Santa. And so my phone is filled with things that Santa is being asked to bring, which is good for me to look back and see, well, what did they want throughout the year? And also because in a month's time, if we talk about that thing again, maybe they don't want it anymore. But it stops the tantrums.
Yeah, so I go, oh my God, that's amazing. And I never just shut it down like, oh, we don't have time to look. I'm just like, oh yeah, show me. And I always go, let's take a photo and put it on your birthday or your Santa list. And immediately they forget about it. But it's just like validating that is
Yeah.
something they want. And it doesn't work all the time. Like sometimes we have the tantrum, sometimes we give in, but majority of the time when I say, let's put it on the list, let's take a photo, and I've acknowledged that, oh, that's cool. What does it do? Oh, how much is it? Let's put it on the list. It's done, right? And they don't think about it again. They won't ever ask for it, and they won't get it for Christmas because they've thought about 100 other things by then.
Yeah.
So,
and it's a little bit like when they were a little bit younger, and like speaking to them and saying what they want. So, if they're throwing a tantrum and say, you want that packet of chips, don't you? And they're like, yes. And just for them to realize that you understand what they want, and like, it kind of builds on that a little bit as well. But how about bank accounts? So do you remember what age you were when you got your first bank account, and do your children have bank accounts?
Okay, so I was one of the Dolomite kids, so it would have just been through school banking, I'm pretty sure. Like we had those yellow books and we'd do the money and stuff. And then I remember like getting my first job and stuff, and I'd go to the bank and I'd check my balance and stuff. So I was always really into banking, probably because of that Dolomite scheme. My kids have bank accounts, but they don't have any money in them. We don't use them. It's if somebody wants to put money in there, but as soon as there's money in there, I have a share fund for them and it goes straight into there. They don't have cash, even with their money boxes and stuff. If they get money for their birthdays, pretty much as soon as possible, it goes into their share fund. So I have a pretty harsh rule that the grandparents hate and the kids hate, but they're going to love me in the long term. So if my kids ever get any money, so if they've got cans, they've done the recycling, they get money for their birthdays, they get money for Christmas. Sometimes people, like my parents, like put money on horses or whatever. Like any way that money flows into their lives, 50% has to go into their share fund, and they get to spend 50% on whatever they want. I know that people do the 3, like the give, save, spend, and we've started introducing that to them. But the hard and fast rule from when they were born was 50% has to go into their share fund. And the kids now know it. They're happy for it. Sometimes they even go, oh, I've got nothing to buy, just put it all in. But most of the time they're like, oh, does this have to go to shares? And I'm like, only half of it, right? So they're going to love me when they're older, but the grandparents are like, oh, can't you just let them buy? I'm like, well, one, I don't want
you can come and tidy up all the stuff.
And yes, they've asked for it once and they don't actually want it. Like we just talked about the photo, they're going to forget about it. So that is my strategy. It's not for everybody, but I'm pretty strict with it.
We've got 2 comments in the chat about this. One was, I begged my parents for a Furby when I was younger. 10 minutes into getting it as my birthday present, they were over it. So that is exactly what we were just talking about. And Marie's also asked, how do you set up a share fund for kids, or is it in your name? Before we go into my experience, do you want to just elaborate on that?
Well, no, let's talk about yours, because then we can talk about that stuff. Because I do the same for my nephew, and if my brother has any more kids, same. So I've got a bit of a strategy on that, but you need advice. So let's go into your experience about your first bank accounts and stuff first.
I remember the day that my first bank account was opened like it was yesterday. It's such a big memory that I have, and I don't know why. I don't know if it was one of those things that it's like a naturally ingrained thing in me that I was always destined to work with money. But I was given $100 and I was 5 years old. So back then that was a lot of money. Yeah. And I never spent any of it. It was all just saving. If I wanted something or I needed something that was separate, that was bought for me, that was a separate discussion. Any savings that I had just built and built and built until I was probably 16, and that's when I probably started spending money. And so I think that's why I'm a really good saver, because I did it for so long and was so focused on it and loved seeing my bank account grow. It was such an exciting thing for me. And so I would have been, I found I've still got I don't know what they call them, those little books. It wasn't what you had. This was with a different bank, but I had a little passbook, I think they called.
They used to call them, yeah.
I've put it away safe. I want to actually dig it out and have another look at it, because it's been a couple of years since I've looked at it.
You look at it all the time, I bet.
I've got it on my desk. No. And where was I going with that? Yeah, I think that is why I find it so easy to save, because I have so much experience in saving money. I wouldn't say I'm against allocating it like spend, save, give, but I know that just focusing on saving had a really big positive impact on my life. And I think it's easier to learn to spend money later on. Like that's something that I went through for a little while, that I didn't want to spend my money. And that's taken a while to adjust. Meeting a husband that spent lots of money at the time when we met probably helped me to release some of those barriers that I had from spending money. But I feel like it's easier for me to spend more than for the clients that I meet to spend less. And in terms of investing, I started investing when I started working in a financial planning firm. So I would have been, it was maybe 19. And in terms of my kids, so I'm a really big believer in not necessarily giving kids a lump sum of money, or, transferring shares into their name at a later age, because I think that you can set them up just as well by teaching them really good money habits and giving them that foundation. So I don't have any plans to say, like, here you go, here's all this money that we've saved for you over the years. At the moment, it's about focusing on establishing our foundation, and then being able to support them in different ways, however we see fit in the future. I have been trying to get Ruby to open up a bank account, because I really want it not to be me saying, like, here's your bank account, this is what we're going to do. I want her to really like that process.
A core memory for her too.
Yes. And so she was nearly there the other day. So she's just turned 7. And I said to her, if we put that money in the bank, then they give you more money and you can take it out. But, this is how we can, and of course, interest rates aren't very good at the moment, but it's more about the concept. So she's not quite there. She likes the physical money at the moment, but I can always keep you updated about that. Maybe we can have another session in 6 months or so when I've finally got her in there and we've got her bank account with her little passbook or whatever they do these days.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried Spriggy or anything?
I haven't. I was actually just going to mention that. I haven't. So I like the kids to have cash because they have to physically hand it over. But as they get a bit older, then I'll probably look at something like that. Absolutely. But, I was thinking when you were talking as well that you're not doing the save, spend, give. I really love that concept, and I will probably introduce it later on when they can make more informed decisions. But right now, I totally agree with you that it's about the foundations. Yeah, I think it's not so much what you save for them or how much you put away or if it's in a bank account or cash or a share fund. It's about the conversations. I think that's what's going to create the really healthy habits. And I have no idea what will happen with the kids' share fund as they get older. If, it'll be, well, you can have it for a house deposit, or if it'll be gone. Like, I talked to them about it, but if something came up and there was a medical emergency or there was this or it was that, it is their money, but it will be used if it has to be. So I don't have any plans for it to be like, oh, you'll have $1 million and you'll buy a house one day or something. And we don't talk to them about that. Like, I don't want them to think that this is their meal ticket, that they don't have to work or do anything. Like, it's not a trust fund, kids. It's like just, putting $20 in here and there. So yeah, it's just more about having the discipline that is what happens, and you set them out. But I can't wait to the day that the kids like have a job and we sit down and we go through like a budget and we talk about tax and we go, right, well, how much do you want to put in savings? How much do you want to put in your spend account and stuff like that? Yeah, I think the most important thing is every family will do it differently. It's going to be based on your experiences, whether you had good ones and you want to do the same thing, or if you had bad ones and you want to do the opposite, or if you're like me that had good and bad and you just kind of want to tweak it with now what I know. Like, it's so important. But if we want to talk about strategy, and we don't want to get too much into strategy in this, because the strategy is actually financial advice, right? Because it's so different for everybody, and it depends on your goals, your tax rate, if you want to restrict the kids' access, how much you'll be going in. Like, there's so much to consider. But just personally from my family, it's invested in a family trust because we have all of that already set up. If I didn't, it wouldn't be in any of that. Whereas before we had that structure, it was in a couple, like we're a couple, it was in the lower earning person's name in trust for the kids, because you can set up accounts in trust for like a share trading. Only some of them do it, and you can then automatically transfer it to the kids' capital gains tax free. But there's lots of different ways that you can do it. So I, as I said, I have a nephew, and I chose, because I'm a parent and I hate plastic junk, and I know that my brother's exactly the same, and this kid's got lots of doting aunties, uncles and grandparents. So I was like, I'm never going to buy him a present. I'm going to get him shares the day he's born, every birthday, every Christmas. So I sat down with my brother and his wife and went, these are like, not financial advice, but these are the options that you have if you want him to have a share fund, like, how do you want to do it? So I really talked to them about that, and they have complete control over it. They've decided that it'll be in one of their names, the lower income earners, and be able to transfer to him. So that's what they chose to do as well, and that's how I started it out. But yeah, you could decide to have it in your name, that you could be like, well, my plan is to have it for the kids, but it's mine and it's my money now. And if something happens, I'll use it. And if I need it for me, like, you're always the priority. It's like you put the oxygen mask on first. So yeah, it could be like that. It doesn't mean that just because it's for the kids and you've been putting it away that you can't use it to save yourself. Your plans change.
Yeah. And I like having a bit of a plan, but realizing that life does change and priorities change and conversations change, but just making sure that money is at the forefront, because money touches every single aspect of our lives, and making sure that we develop a really healthy relationship with money for us and for our kids, and that their money memories are positive ones, because mindset is so important. Is there anything else when we talk about money and kids? Like, do you do like chores for pocket money, or do you have a set pocket money set up? Like, what does that look like?
I don't, and my ex-husband and I talk about this all the time. Like, is there going to be a point that we do pocket money? Right now, we don't. It's more like, if they ask for something and they want something, we talk about, well, how much money do you have and could I contribute, and things like that. I kind of am of the belief that if you're in a household, you all contribute and you don't need to be paid for it. So if there is pocket money, I don't think it will be related to doing specific chores, because I want them to contribute regardless. I'm not sure. I might change my mind on this. It's, they're 7 and 9, and my 9-year-old, he has ASD and ADHD. So it's not like, I think, a normal 9-year-old's mental capacity. So it hasn't been something that's come up right now. Like, it's more like, hey guys, could you put your clothes away? Could you do this? Could you do that? Because you're a member of the household. And then if we're out at the shops, and we don't, like I said, we don't have other priorities. We're not going to Time Zone, or we're not going to the movies. And then I'm like, well, yeah, maybe you can get something small, or if you chip in, I'll chip in. But it's, I haven't done a strict pocket money or anything yet. What about you?
No, not yet. Being ages 4 and 7 and like kind of still grasping that side of things, there has been the odd occasion where I've spent $20 and I've never seen my house so clean, because I say, like, for every little job, I'll give you, okay, if you do this, this is worth 50 cents. If you do this, this is worth $1, $2, whatever it might be. And we kind of just make it a really fun experience and kind of whiz around the house. And as soon as you can tell that they fall out of interest with that, we stop. But yeah, there was one time not long ago, $20 and sparkling. So good. But that's not necessarily a regular thing.
I get it, because they see, well, that's what earning money is and having a job is, and you get paid, you get paid for things. But yeah, one of the other things I do with my kids is when I talk to them about stuff, they'll ask for a toy or whatever, and I'll be like, people have to go to work and they have to pay all their other bills first, and they would have to work, X amount of time to get that. Is that something that's worth it to, So I try to talk to them about stuff like that. You could see their little minds boggling.
Yeah. And as they get older, you can start to have conversations with the time side of things. So, if they do have their first job and they're being paid, I don't know what the going rate is for like a 15-year-old these days. Yeah. I remember I got paid like $7 an hour, and that was amazing. So let's say someone is earning, I'm just going to use a nice figure that's easy to comprehend. Let's say someone is earning, and this could be an adult as well, earning $30 an hour, and they want something that's $15. Well, that's half an hour of your time at work. Do you want to spend that half an hour of your time to buy this cafe croissant and coffee or whatever it might be? So just, changing the way we talk about money, think about money, spend money, invest money, just everything money. In a good way.
It's going to adapt as the kids get older. Your strategy is going to change as we learn more as well, because, you know, we're not all like the best parents, right? We're learning to be parents at the same time as raising our kids. And every time, you know, I see something on socials or I listen to a podcast, it changes my mind. Maybe I'm going to tweak that, or I love that idea. Like, it's always evolving. So I think that's the main thing, that there's no hard and fast rule. The only hard and fast one that I've set, which people might not agree with, is the 50-50. But yeah, I'm just like, no, that was something that I'm just going to do and see if it stuffs them up when they're older, or it can be an experiment. We'll see if they're in therapy because of it later.
And I think your personal financial position at the time will also impact what strategies and how you manage things. So when Ruby was 6 months old, so our first child was 6 months old, my husband stopped working for 6 years to go and be a full-time uni student. And so money over those 6 years was different in our household, and now he's working again. So this is the time where the way that we're doing things with the kids now that they're also older is changing. And so to be really mindful of that, I see people put away money in kid accounts for kids, but then don't actually have enough money to meet their living expenses. So have to dip into the accounts for the kids, and that brings incredible guilt. And so it's not healthy for anyone. It doesn't mean that, you know, you can't help your kids in the future or anything, but just make sure whatever you're doing is a healthy kind of setup as well.
Yeah, you shouldn't be putting more pressure on yourself. And I know that a lot of people do that. They hear that, oh, so-and-so's doing $10 a week, or they're doing $20 a week, or whatever, or we're not doing anything. It just depends on your circumstances, absolutely, at the time. And you might be building wealth or building your career, or, you know, being a stay-at-home mum and spending more time with them, or doing other things that is so much more important than just comparing yourself to the next person. It's just like your own finances. You can't compare. And if you do nothing else, if you can't afford to be putting money away for the kids or doing anything, that is absolutely fine. You can still be, at no cost to you, having a conversation every time you walk into Coles or Woolies, or every time you go to Kmart, Target, prioritizing your spending, talking to them about the value of stuff. That is going to give them so much more than handing them a bucket of money at some point.
Yeah. And starting to look at things like unit pricing, and not necessarily being distracted by the specials when maybe they're not that special. Although I did use that the other day with Finn. He wanted that tiny Teddy cereal. I don't know if you've seen it, but I was like, oh no, we can't. It doesn't have the yellow ticket on it. And it worked, and we got out of there okay.
Yeah.
But we are out of time this week. If anyone wants to hear more about this side of finance, dealing with it with kids, let us know and we can do another episode. Otherwise, we'll be onto something different next week, and we will see you then. Bye, everyone.